Hey guys, Timothy here, and welcome to another video sharing my thoughts on another subject. Today, we're going to be talking about Andrew Tate. Now, I thought about there's many other sort of men seen of as sort of masculine role models in society today, influencers that I've had in my mind to speak on that have come up, different ones, different times over the last few weeks. And as I'm experimenting with sharing more of my thoughts, but when I in the last few days, in the last 48 hours, this character, Andrew Tate, has like kind of spiked in my consciousness to be like, okay, this is probably the most important one for me to speak on right now. And in honest truth, probably because I can relate to a lot of the stuff. Not that I agree with it, but I can relate to what's driving his desires and what he kind of shares. And so, as someone not who's wants to judge or demonize him in any way, but once thinks there's a lot that we can learn and understand from. Not that we can learn from what he's teaching, but we can learn from how he's acting and why other men are choosing to follow this. So I'm not defending any of what he shares, but I'm also trying not to judge it as well. I do my best not to. Of course, they might come out, but as I say, this is someone who's can recognize many of the same unloving desires that this man carries in myself, and someone who's trying to work through it. Maybe it's a good time for me to share. So there's a lot of womanization, discussion of womanization, misogyny, what true masculinity really is. We'll discuss or share some thoughts on that, what his expression of it is, and then what it could actually be potentially. And also as an introspective exercise, as I mentioned in the last time, what I like to do is, if I'm going to share these thoughts, is to also discuss why I feel drawn to share, both the pure motivation in me and also the impure motivation of me to share, so that I can kind of learn and grow and purify as I go. And I'd also welcome you. I'm going to leave the comments open on this. If you recognize a motivation in me that maybe I've not recognized, feel free to share it. That's unloving, obviously more than welcome for that personal truth. If it's loving, that obviously cool, that's nice, but I'm not going to ask for that. But if you recognize kind of an unloving something in me, or if I'm unloving in this video or judgmental, please, in a respectful way, share that in the comments. And so just to get right into it, basically the problem I see with Andrew Tate, and I will get into a bit of who he is, but just first off, is that there are a lot of teenagers and young men that are listening to him and listening to his advice, and I don't believe most of what he shares to be the truth, and can ultimately lead to very unloving treatment of other human beings. I think there's a lot of young men being directed the wrong way, as I myself did, and still have a desire to. I'm just maybe better at not acting on that desire and can recognize what's driving that desire a little better than I used to be in my 20s. So as I say, not sharing this as someone who's perfect, who figured it out, or to cast judgment, just as someone who can literally recognize a lot of myself in Andrew and some of it and his followers as well. But ultimately, what I think it boils down to is there are a lot of young men in similar turmoil, deeper turmoil, to Andrew, that's buried in lots of addictions and shiny objects and pretty women and a lack of direction for their lives. And so ultimately these addictions won't bring true happiness, and it's just going to bring more pain, as I'm going to share my story a little bit, and equally or possibly worse than that, it's going to bring pain to others who don't deserve it. If to live in the way that he glorifies, so to speak. And so to just before I was going to do that, I didn't know whether to do this at the end, but I'm going to do it at the start. If you think this should go at the end, let me know in the comments, because I want to like kind of experiment and streamline this process. But I'll start off with my impure motivations for making this video and for speaking about Andrew Tate. I think I have a lot of similar emotions of him, and I think I have a similar desire to want to be Neo, as he talks about the Matrix, a Neo type character that can save humanity and bring truth to humanity. I think I have this desire, like, for whatever reason in me, I want to be the guy, one of the guys, or the guy to bring bring it, which is a flavor of Messiah complex, which I'm pretty certain Andrew has, and I definitely have some of that myself. And there may even be some jealousy at the attention that he has got for speaking what he believes to be the truth. And so I'm someone who also likes to see myself as speaking what I believe to be the truth, and have gotten some attention, got some attack, but on the scale that Andrew's got, there's probably some jealousy in me for that. I don't think it's healthy that I have that, but I think that's there. And also, the final note on my impure motivations for why I want to make this is to probably to avoid some of my own pain by pointing out someone else's. Like, it helps me to, like, yeah, I don't, people have shared that with me before. I think that's true. I don't fully understand it, but I can sort of intellectually get that, yeah, I'm avoiding my own pain by pointing out someone else's. It's easier to point the finger than to reflect on my own stuff. But I think I've done a bit of both. So in my reflecting, I'm able to kind of recognize stuff. So which will lead me to sort of the pure motivations here is what I believe to be my pure motivations. I don't think what he's sharing is the truth. And I think it's actually damaging people who may listen to him. I think it's damaging to their souls and can certainly degrade their souls, as I think it's happened to my soul through the process of acting on these injuries and desires. And it can damage the people that these desires are acted upon, i.e., half of the human race, the females in society. I think I can speak from my own experience with this, so that I think that helps. That's part of, I guess, part of the pure motivation is that I can share as someone who's gone, not to the same degree, I don't think, as Andrew Tate, but not to lessen it, but still, that same lustful drive within me. And possibly partly why I want to share is maybe some act of repentance within me for my own sins. So wanted to help other males not do the same damage to themselves and to women. But that might be me just telling myself that to make me feel better. I'm not quite sure. I think there's a little bit of that, but yeah. Right. So a brief bit on Tate as we get into this. I'm not someone who's like, I'm not an avid listener of his by any means. I've not listened to even probably 10 minutes of a podcast. I've just listened to snippets that have come up. I've maybe listened to like 5-minute sections here and there. I've watched videos about him from both perspectives, people supporting him, people kind of speaking against him. I've seen a lot of maybe shorts and stuff like that. Doesn't really pop up on my IG, but on YouTube stuff pops up and I'll watch it just to kind of get a taste for what people are watching and talking about. It comes up a lot. And he's basically for those that don't know him, seems like a very wealthy, young, early 30s male. He was a kickboxing champion. He seems to fly around on private jets, drives in many different sports cars, and have a very material focus. Apparently, he owned like a girls webcam site, and owned online casinos. And then more recently, since I think he made his money, now he sells courses teaching other people how to make money, other people how to get women, how you should treat women, and all this kind of stuff, promoting to that young male kind of audience to making more money that way. And Ray recently was arrested and is in Romania for charges of rape and human trafficking, which is pretty intense, right? But he's not been convicted of it. It's just currently kind of allegations, and been arrested, and he's standing trial, I think. And since there are women that have spoken and defended him and say, these allegations are false. They've had maybe rough sexual interactions, but actually for him to do what they're charging him for is not true. I don't know the truth. I'm not really even going to speculate too much on that stuff. That's not the purpose of this video. It's more to identify what drives his actions and the people that follow his actions. He was Christian, very much strongly claims to believe in God, but he's now become a Muslim. Could ponder why. I mean, for me, I don't believe you need. I believe in God. I don't believe you need a religion to have a relationship with God. I believe you can. People in all religions that believe in a God may have a relationship to some degree with God, and there are many people without a religion who have a relationship with God. But it's interesting that he kind of went from Christianity to Islam. My speculation on that would be potentially his beliefs that women are inferior are more aligned with many, maybe not all people in that religion, I'm sure, but many people in that religion. That seems to be a theme. And forgive me if I'm wrong on that take, like, but that's yeah, but that seems to be the perspective from that kind of culture, is that women are more subservient to men. And also I think probably the main reason is probably to do with money, if I'm honest, and kind of the Dubai, United Arab Emirates money, that he's probably appealing to a large portion of that audience with what he shares. And so maybe he's aligned with them and recognized, if I kind of jump ship to that religion, I can make even more money. Who knows? But I think his beliefs on God are quite warped, if I'm honest. From my take, from what I've seen. Yeah, and one of his main beliefs, yeah, literally, that women should be subservient to men. Women should stay at home and cook and raise the family while the men does the work. And I think I heard him say once that a woman cheating on a man is like way, way worse than a man cheating on a woman, and justified it and all this stuff. And there's just basically lack of equality in the way he sees it. And that kind of leads me to my story, because I probably have by saying probably is probably my denial of how I do currently feel about women, and I'm trying to come to be honest with myself about it. But basically, I'll share a bit of my story so it can relate why I feel justified to speak on this. So, and I'll try and go quickly through it. But school, not the popular kid, but not by any means unpopular. Just kept myself to myself. Did kind of follow my passions, but I always was attracted to girls. Had a lustful desire, but didn't really have any outlet for it. Just had these feelings. Let's just say it, wanked a lot, right? Got into parkour, got a bit of notoriety, was able to get with a few more women, had not really many serious relationships, but had a few sort of seeing each other. That's what we call it in England. I don't know where they call it, where people are, but you're not dating, you're not boyfriend and girlfriend, but you're seeing each other. So I had a few of those relationships, where I never felt fully committed, but yeah. And then I got into veganism, and that allowed my my injury, or whatever. How do I put this? I was able to get access to speak to a lot more girls who were a lot more open to sexual interactions with less commitment and more frequently. So basically, I had a lot of partners over 5 or 6 years. I thought it was always, my beliefs at the time was it's all good. We both agreed to it. I just don't want a relationship. Rare. But I never felt satisfied. It never made me happy. I never truly cared for the women I was with. I recently wrote a list of every girl that I've been with, that I could remember that I'd been with, and I was pretty sure over 3 days I kind of got most of it in the first day, and then other ones would pop to my mind, and I had a figure in my head for how many I thought I'd been with, and it turned out that the number was more than double what I'd been with. Like, you have a relationship, say how many people you've been with, you have that conversation, how many people have you had sex with, and the number was more than double what I'd anticipate, what I guessed, what I told myself, what I'd kind of wanted to believe about myself wasn't as harsh as the number actually was in the end. And that was quite a shock to me. But I rarely ever felt satisfied from it. And I always felt that the drive to it felt like it was masking something, right? And I experimented with it. I experimented with polygamy once. I had a relationship. I said, actually, I think humans, because I remember hearing that in our ancestry, tribes would have lived together, and men would have had multiple partners with the women and they would have had children, but no one kind of knew who the dad was, and the tribes would have, it takes a tribe to raise a child or family, whatever it is. And all those beliefs in that humans weren't meant to have single partners, monogamous relationships. And that kind of, I was like, yep, kind of can see the logic in what you're sharing. Let me experiment with that. And I did it once and it didn't feel right. Saw the pain in the person when I shared it with them that I'd been with someone else, and yeah, ultimately wasn't. Just realizing how unfulfilled I truly was with that, and on that journey, at the same time, I'm trying to solve my biomechanical, my physical issues with all these different programs and systems to try and fix my body, and all these things that promise results, changing diets, changing practices and yoga and all these different alternative things, and still facing many issues. It kind of led me to recognize that there was other things at play than just the physical. There's other things going on, which led me to start to see that how much emotions are affecting the body. And this may be completely logical now, but I had to go through those 20s years to come to that. And maybe you've come to that realization, maybe you're coming to that realization, or you've known that for ages, but how much, if you're stressed, you don't digest as well, you can have constipation, or you can have all other stuff. Is that we're all kind of aware of that, but how it can affect your joints and your stiffness and other things can be affected by emotions that literally that we're not allowing to flow. Energy and emotion, we're not allowing to flow. They become trapped somewhere, right? Where is that? Now it's starting to make sense to me that there is a soul. It is a very real thing, and that emotions flow through that, from that, however it comes, and that when we're not allowing it to flow, the body kind of, as a holographic representation of that, manifests these issues. And there's so many different nuances to that, but that's what I started to recognize. And so potentially some of my physical issues are because of, literally, and this might sound I don't know how it might sound, I don't know the word for it, but the degradation of my soul, that my soul was degrading. And when I think back, you can call it aging, right? And we all age at kind of different rates, and what causes that aging at different rates. In my 20s, I had a lot less issues. In my 30s, I had more. Yeah, like I say, you can call it aging, but it felt literally like I can sense, and it's very like subtle, but that all of these different sexual interactions with women over time added up to my soul degrading, which has led to me feeling less happy and less comfortable in my body. And that if that, actually, we want to get to that, if that one issue, if I didn't act out that and degrade my soul in that area, how different would my life be? And I don't think I've fully started to even reflect on that yet. But what Divine Truth teach is that God is both male and female, right? Not just the Father. You can call God the Father, but also God the Mother as well, right? Both masculine and feminine qualities. And that where we have unloving beliefs and treatment to each gender create blocks to that relationship of that part of God. So where I have unloving beliefs about women, where I treat women unlovingly, that creates a block to the female aspect of God. Where I treat men unlovingly and have unloving beliefs about other men, judgments, whatever, that creates a block to that aspect of God. And obviously, if you want a whole relationship, you want to work on the whole thing. And so I was experimenting with this and experimenting with these teachings. And one night I prayed to God to show me my biggest block to God, to you. I asked you, didn't I, for my biggest block. And I guess it must have been sincere. It seemed like the results I got within the very next morning. So I'd ask God, my biggest block, show me my biggest block to you. The very next morning, my partner at the time wanted to speak. What I'd done, I'd left my iPad at her house, and she'd gone, I don't have locks on my phone or my iPad, anything. She'd opened it and I've got Instagram on the iPad, and she'd opened the Instagram and she'd gone through all of my direct messages on Instagram for years and years and seen and read how I'd spoken to women, girls on Instagram, and and the true nature of my soul, the things that I wouldn't fully express to her or show to her, that we all have secrets we keep, right? Most of us, stuff, parts of us that we don't want the other half to know about, that was fully exposed, fully. And I want to defend myself and say there was no conversations while we were together. That's not an action. Didn't see that in my feel like my parents were always loyal. That's, we learn from our parents, and you can learn either way. You can refuse to be like your parents or whatever, right? But for some reason, I've never cheated on a partner. So that's something that I'm grateful that I've not had that. But there's so much other stuff that is unloving in the way I want to view and treat women. So she'd read all those comments, and then that conversation was had of like, I don't even want to get into that, right? But I'd asked God for my biggest block, and my partner at the time, I'd read how I'd spoken to all these women, all these, slid in the DMs conversations, fully exposed. And I'm like, all sorts of feelings about that. But ultimately, I wasn't. I think at some level, I'm mad, but ultimately, I was like, I do have a faith that God knows everything anyway. So it's almost better to come out in the light anyway. It's better that she knew. So there was a part of me that was annoyed, but there's also a part of me that was just like, fair play. Like, it's out in the open now. Like, it is there. And so, as I'm saying, not someone who's solved these issues yet, but someone who's literally, law of attraction is bringing me awareness of myself, of the true condition of my soul, of things, with an ability to reflect, and through my conscience starting to recognize, that is maybe not right, or not, a good way to act or be, and it's not nice to others, and yeah. And so the root of that, right? Because if like I say, this is how I can relate to Andrew to some degree, and the lustful urges and other men and young males, and is, I think I don't think, yeah, I know I have a lot of anger at my mother for whatever reason, from my childhood, from being controlled, from being denied to feel, being denied to be myself. I've been in a room with her and just felt rage with no conversation happening. I'm just there making my salad, whatever it was. She walks in the room and I'm like perfectly happy. She walks in the room and I just feel like I'm so mad at this, and I don't know why. Don't know where it comes from, and it's come out in so many conversations. I feel I get attacked, and I just see red and light up, and I'm tantruming as an adult and all this kind of stuff. So there's a huge, I can recognize there's a huge amount of anger for me at my mum. Trying to work through it now. I'm releasing it when things come up. I've tried to get into it. I've got a punching bag. I got a stick. I'm whacking pillows. I'm getting into it. Sometimes I'll get to some grief below it. Sometimes I'll feel like a real flow of energy as I'm raging, but I'm not projecting it at anyone. I'm not in anyone's presence. I'm just allowing it to flow and say whatever comes up. And I do feel somewhat of a release from it, be it all fractionally right now, but there's something in that. And on the other side of it, there's probably, like, makes sense to me, what I'm learning, that anger is a capping emotion for the true emotions below it. And anger is kind of an unhumble one. And below it, you've got the grief or the fear, whatever those are. I'm hopefully going to get to them when I'm truly willing to feel them. But I've got a lot of anger to work through first, and I keep trying to avoid the anger and go to the grief and go to the sadness. But I still think that's a big cap, and I can recognize in people like Andrew and a lot of the people that follow him, there's very likely a huge amount of anger also at their mothers. And so how do we tie this in, right? The way we see our mom, and if you any kind of psychology, kind of you can recognize these links. My anger at my mum and my frustration and wanting to stop her controlling me. When someone wants to control you, the way we use anger to try and control them back, right? So I use anger to control the woman, and that manifests in all my relationships with women from that moment, from how I want to act on my mum. That becomes all of it. So I use anger to control women, and to stop me feeling my hurt, I want to control them and keep a certain distance, right? Keep that, like, I'll control you, I'll never get too attached, I'll remain slightly avoidant, and that way I'll protect myself and keep my pain, from stop myself from feeling that pain. So that, I feel like there's kind of a mirror, because it's hard to see that directly link this lustful urge, this desire to do this to this woman, to be in her but not have any connection to her, to relate that to your pain. That takes that it's like it's gone off a mirror, like a hall of mirrors, boom 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 boom. And so you have to trace it to kind of get to the true root of it, which it's still not a clear path for me, but I can sense that it's coming from there, that this pain is coming from there. And still, yeah, so much to do. So if we look then to relate this to Andrew himself, Mr. Tate, or Top G as he calls himself, I've not seen much, but I've seen him talk about his childhood. I don't think his father was about very much. His father maybe worked for the CIA. I think there's different reports. But there was one story I heard him say where his dad came home. I think his dad was American, his mum was English. His dad came home, saw him, gave him a hug, say hello, went and argued with his mum for like however many minutes, and then came back to him and said, "Okay, son, see you in a few weeks then." And he was like, "Where are you going, Dad?" And he's like, "Well, when you're older, you'll understand." Something to that effect, right? His dad came, argued with his mum, left the house, said, "I don't want to be here any longer. Bye, son." And so just as that one kind of snippet fraction of an insight into his childhood, you can see then how an absent father came, popped in, saw how he treated his mum, and then went. And then Andrew's left there with his mother, who's angry at men, probably angry at men, would appear. I don't know, it would seem. And then Andrew's grown up in that atmosphere. So is his brother Tristan as well, has got some notoriety as well. They seem to be together a lot. So both of them grew up in that household with a father who wasn't very much there and a mother who's probably angry at men. So they've grown up being attacked by their mum, child scared for their life, wondering where dad is. Why doesn't dad love me? Why isn't dad about? And so then they grow up with all those bottled up emotions, and this is literally the crux of it, acting on those injuries rather than trying to work and navigate through them. They are living in and acting on all those problems. Now, I've heard Andrew himself say, he said, "Ask me how many kids I've got." The guy said, "Guess." The guy said, he said, "Guess how many kids I've got." The guy said, "2." He goes, "I'm not that weak." He said, "Guess again." He goes, "Oh, 5." He goes, "Oh, come on, I'm not that weak." He goes, 10. He goes, "Around that number." So I guess I'm judging here, so I catch myself there. But bragging about having 10 children with multiple partners. Now, like I said, I've not listened to a full podcast of him ever, but I've not heard him talk about his children. Doesn't seem like he has much relationship with his children. His view is that women should raise the child. And so he's now going to have a lot of children, it seems, with the same injury that he has had, that he's got, where his father wasn't around. Why doesn't daddy love me? But as an adult, it's hard to recognize that layer buried within, of father doesn't love me. Let me try and get love from all these other men. That's what it kind of manifests as, I think, in his case, is I want other men to love me. My dad didn't show me love, so I'll try and get it from all other male figures in the world. And so wanting to be this, which I think drives some of my actions as well, is wanting to be seen as this male role model figure this alpha character that the top G, as he likes to be, living in his injuries, which are driving him to materialism, driving him to misogyny and womanization, and to believe that these things are all okay, and that these are the truth of just how a man should be and how a man is for him to be happy. And the irony of that is literally taking advantage of other people's injuries and other people's weaknesses, taking advantage of the young men who are growing up confused, looking for a male role model, and they're just getting told good things about their unloving desires, and go, oh, cool, it's good. I should have a right to just use a woman then. And so that's the irony, as I say, is he talks about fighting the matrix. That is literally, if you're going to go in that analogy, which I don't mind, I kind of find that as a fun analogy, the matrix. That is literally matrix behavior. Like, that is parasitical, like to chase money and materialism, which I'm not saying I'm not someone who is completely free from that, but I can recognize that it's still feeding into that. If you want to use the matrix analogy, it's still feeding into all of that, for your own, making money for yourself, for your personal gain, to get your end away, as they say. That's not at all breaking down the matrix, if that's what you want to do. But anyway, that's for him to recognize, but it's not important. It's just in the sense that, fighting the matrix, you don't have to use that analogy, but to become more loving is what's important. And so to live and act in the injuries and in his pain, and to help other people, to support other people in doing that, in living their in addictions and living in their pain, is not, I don't see that as brave anymore. Like that, maybe one time I see a man like that, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. Speak, maybe, I don't know if I'd fully would have backed him if I was in my 20s, but I would have maybe been like, okay, let me experiment with what he's teaching. But now I don't see that as, that's almost the opposite. Like, when you break it down, as I say, that's the opposite of bravery. Like, bravery for me is emotional bravery. It's like the humility to feel all of his hurt and not act on it. Man, that takes some guts. Like that, those guys are the real role models. I don't know if there's many of them about. That's what I aspire to be now. That's for me what more masculine. That's more human. That's harder to do. So yeah, let's talk about that, and what true masculinity is. I'm not someone who, I won't claim to at all fully know, but I'm gonna have a pot shot. I'm gonna have a guess, and because I don't think there's many. Yeah, I don't think there's many real role models out. But I'll talk about the current state of what a kind of society's views of masculine, or young men's maybe views of what masculine is right now. I've got some notes on it. So it values intellect over emotions. It values being right over being kind. It values arrogance. It rewards all these things. Anger. It's competitive. Athleticism is very highly valued. Wealth and status are incredibly highly valued. Big muscles at all costs, steroids and all, is highly valued. And that's what I'd say a lot of current society sees as representation of masculine. Overpowering of women, standing in front and not alongside. But ultimately, if you look at that list, none of them, anyone that's explored them, maybe you've done a little bit, maybe you can recognize it from the sidelines, maybe you're deep into it, none of them bring happiness. And the fact that they don't bring, like, none of them bring true happiness. Being purely intellectual over emotional won't bring happiness, because happiness is an emotion, right? Being right over being kind won't bring happiness. It won't bring togetherness. It won't bring, like, yeah, it won't bring connect. It will just create more divide and disconnection. Being arrogant is not rewarding. Anyone who's arrogant, I'm arrogant in moments, and afterwards I'm like, man, that doesn't feel good to do that. Why am I doing that? Being angry, it's a fake way to get control and power. It's not going to bring happiness. Wealth and status, money, notoriety may bring like a facade of happiness, temporary, or sort of freedom that comes with money, but true happiness is not really there, because there are children with no money in horrible homes in terms of environment, but the loving parents, and they can be perfectly happy. So those things are literally like the lack of happiness is a clue that those are the wrong way. So I don't think they are really masculine or healthy human traits. And current examples of what many people may see as masculine, and myself included, some of these would have seen at some point. Obviously, Andrew Tate, the example we're talking about, Joe Rogan, Liver King, possibly Until the Lie, possibly still after the lie. To some people, would still see him as a masculine role model. Athletes are many, and that's not to say they're all good or bad examples, but the many athletes are MMA fighters, something I definitely looked up to a lot. And then someone like even Jordan Peterson, who I'd say is somewhat better of a masculine role model than the other examples, but still living, I think, in a lot of his pain, acting in a lot of his pain. Anger being the main action that he maybe needs to work through. And I think we'll maybe talk about Peterson. Maybe we'll see how it comes. There's other people I think we can discuss and learn from as well. So what I think masculinity actually is, that's what the current state is, what I think it actually is. And this is like just my take. I'm just kind of what I'm sensing from where I'm at now. Hopefully I'll get more clarity on this in the years to come. But I don't think we're given much mainstream examples of true masculinity, because I think there's a certain humbleness to it that doesn't get them the notoriety, and what we currently value in society isn't really aligned with this. So they're not brash people, and so they're not given the spotlight so much. I think there's a sort of quiet self-assuredness to real masculinity. I think they listen, respect, and value women. I think that they should understand that women have a perspective and a strength with the sensitivity that men may be blind to. And this is just something I'm recently coming to terms with. I'm coming to recognize that, like, because women are more dialed in emotionally, emotions can and do ultimately can navigate to truth almost more accurately than intellect in many ways. It obviously depends on the scenario and that, but women have a sensitivity due to their heightened emotional state that men don't have, that allows them to see clearer on scenarios than many men, who myself will be stuck in arrogance or in anger and think that I'm right due to that, and completely missing. And I'm starting to, wow, this whole half of the human race that I've not allowed myself to be open to learning from is there, and they're actually more dialed in than I ever realized before, and I can learn from, and they can help me to become more loving rather than to help me in my own loving desires, And so I think there's a certain understanding that truly masculine men have for women that they can be open to and learn from. Ultimately, there's one word that the human race uses for what I think masculine could be, maybe once was: gentle man. Like, what does that mean? A gentle man, like a soft man. That's a word that we don't really use as much, or if we do use it now, gentleman's handshake or something, but that's a beautiful word. At some point it meant something. I don't think it has the same meaning now that it once had, but it could have. Examples of this, more so, there's still a spectrum, right? So there's still elements of true masculinity that the other people have. Like, I still think Rogan's got some good traits and some good desires for truth amid some arrogance and other stuff. But the people on that kind of this side of the line, from my perspective, people like Gabor Mate, who seems much more aware of the power of emotional work, Russell Brand's someone I feel like has grown over the years, and I've been a fan of for years. That's um, Wim Hof. I think there's a nice softness to Wim. There's still, I think, a lot of pain there as well, but certainly, when you see the older videos and now, I feel like he's softened. Mentioned him last week. Prince Harry, I think, is a fair example. People might have mixed views on that. Then there's athletes. I remember seeing a video recently of Federer's retirement game, and Nadal was there, and Nadal and Federer were both crying. I think, yeah, there's something in tennis where there's a certain, maybe it's the gentleman thing, you know. Djokovic as well. I link Djokovic. He stands up for truth, to what he believes to be truth quite well, against the attack from the media. Kyrie Irving as well, someone who's not shied away from sharing what he believes to be true and loving. Ultimately, I think the greatest example from what I can see, this is just through YouTube, most of this, pretty much all of it, Jesus teaching with divine truth. From what I have huge admiration for his teachings, and I think they're the closest thing to guide men towards understanding and becoming truly masculine. I think he's a better example. I think, yeah, but that's from perceived through YouTube. But from what I can see from presentations, I really admire his take on it, and I'd love to hear more from him on masculinity. So some final words to sum this up, to close out. Ultimately, whether you're a man or woman, this is about growing up where our parents have failed to do it properly. It takes a lot of introspection, a lot of openness, a lot of feeling into things. But growing up, to put it simply, and I now think, means one thing, and that is to become a more loving person. That is what growing up is. And I don't think what Andrew Tate teaches and shares helps young men to grow up. I think it's taken them further from who they really are, further from the truth, further from loving open relationships, further from the other gender. And it can ultimately make I believe it can degrade their souls, degrading Andrew's soul, degrading their soul, and harm the souls of the people that these are acted out upon. Now, Andrew himself is going to have, if this is how it works, you know, not only is his actions going to have to pay the price, you know, he is paying the price in his soul, but also teaching this stuff to other people. That's a cost to him as well, for teaching those lessons, those unloving truths, you know, to other people, to then act. If people are acting unlovingly from his guidance, that's a cost to him. So I really hope and pray for him to, if he has got a relationship with God, to be open to that and learning from God, maybe, as I'm trying to do now. It could help him, because you know, there's great some of those are the greatest stories. Not that it has to be that way, but people that have led people in the wrong direction, who then recognize it and could be humble enough to go, hang on a minute, guys, turn around. This is a dead end road. I've been wrong here, and I don't think we should do it. Even if the rest of the people go, screw you, like, we love it this way, we're going to carry on going this direction, you know. But he can still have time to actually go, you know what, I shouldn't have treated half the human race this way. I recognize that now. I want a loving, monogamous relationship with a partner. That's, for me, is growing up. That's maturity, rather than living in and acting on injuries. And I think if everyone focused on growing themselves up with the focus of how can I become more loving, I think when you do that, everything becomes more obvious from that alone. From focusing on just trying to become more loving, I think everything else, every other decisions in life start to become more obvious. And the world will naturally start to clean itself up from all the issues we have today, because people will not stand for stuff that they don't want to stand for. People will listen to other people that maybe they wouldn't have listened to before, and things will get moving in a much better direction. And that, holding that, like I've so much to learn, and these issues I'm just, tip of the iceberg on, but I can intellectually start to recognize it now. And so to hold that, to become more loving, is the way to path to growing up as my North Star, is what I want to do now. And I think that just that alone hopefully will help me continue to grow and yeah, and be a better person. The truth when it comes to relationships, and this is what divine truth teach, and it could be a beautiful truth, right? I never believed really in soulmates before, and it makes sense now why. When I've got these kind of injuries towards women, I wouldn't have seen that, and it helped me to justify many relationships. But if there is a God, and God is loving, and he designed this world, wouldn't that be flipping cool if he made a perfect other half to you that just shared in all the same joys that you share in? A perfect adventure buddy that you can reflect with and learn and grow with and connect with. Like that's pretty, I think that makes sense to me. That's a pretty loving thing. That if you have a soulmate, I've got one, you've got one, everyone's got one. Maybe if that's the case, that's pretty flipping cool. And that what they also teach with that is every time when we have these injuries towards the opposite gender and we hold on to them, we push our soulmate away. And as we're able to work through them, it can pull your soulmate, a law of attraction, pull your soulmate towards you if you can clear those injuries. If that's how it is, that's part of what's driving me to try to work through this, because that would be cool. Part of it is my own pain that I'm tired of, that I'm tired of, yeah. And I want to, and I love Jesus as a role model, man. Like, love, it makes sense. It's starting to make sense now. So that's the name of the game of life on earth. Why not make it the name of the game? So if that's how it is, that's cool. I'm yet to find out if I got a soulmate, but maybe. I think so. I think so. I think I believe it now. But yeah, whatever you believe, that's up to you. We're all on this journey, sharing earth together. Thanks for watching and tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video. Godspeed.